All right, you're asking for it, so here it is. Listen to this.
I want you fucking laughing at we partners pod, kid. You understand? We in here drinking, singing, swinging, all that shit, dog. We sweating, getting wet, all that.
All right, welcome to, I don't even know what to call this episode. It's still Quarentimes. We're still drinking partners, but we've switched up even again, like we're ever evolving drinking partners. We came back into the studio. Day and myself are back in the studio, but now we're going to be doing our guests, via Zoom, utilizing the digital space. I don't know if this is 1, if this is 8, if it's 297. I don't know what number this is. This is, hey, I'm tired of being at home with these kids. Welcome to Drinking Partners episode. Get me the hell out of my house with my kids. I am half of your hosting tandem, Ed Bailey. I'm joined as always with my co-host on the same couch. This is different. COVID has brought us closer, even though we're so far away. Dave Bracey, say what up to the people.
What's good with you people? Man, I hope you are somewhere safe and sane during all of this motherfucking madness, man. We are the Drinking Partners, and we're glad to be back in some capacity. If you're looking for us, you can find us on epicastnetwork.com/partnerspod. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, Google Play, and Spotify under Drinking Partners. And you can find us on IG, Twitter, and Facebook at PartnersPod. You know what, man? I don't even know how long we've been asking y'all anymore. Again, what is time? What is time
for several months, though. So we have to re-up the ask.
How many years have we been in 2020? You know what I mean?
Shit, I don't know. I've grown about 38 gray hairs.
Right. I'm looking like Obama at the end of the presidency out here. Yeah, I mean, like it's a different thing, man. I don't know how long we've been asking you. I don't know when the last time it was that we asked you, but we are going to continue to ask you, man. Please hop on iTunes, hop on Facebook, rate and review. That's how we know we're doing well. That's how we let others know that we're doing well, and that's how we continue to do well, man. So please hop on iTunes, hop on Facebook, rate and review.
Listen, you love us. You see us out. Well, no. You used to see us out in public.
You can hear us out in public.
You used to see us out in public. You told us that you loved us. So when we last saw us, you loved us. But we need you to, and even more so now, we need you to please, at the click of a button, tell the internet, tell the world, as we try to evolve this podcast and still bring you these wonderful stories, bring you this wonderful content, let us know what you like, dislike, et cetera, man. So
leave an honest review,
Yeah, leave an honest review. If you don't like me, don't say my name. Because I can't retaliate. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to see you out in public, so you're cloaked by anonymity, but we'll find you. But no, we appreciate rates and reviews. We appreciate our guests today jumping in because we don't have anything to promote. This is normally when we would promote some shit, but
yeah, we usually are like, we actually have friends and people who like us in public, in case y'all forgot about that or whatever. So, right now it feels like the girlfriend in Canada, though. It's like I keep telling people like, I used to be somebody pre-COVID,
Yeah, I used to do these shows. There used to be a bunch of people here. People laughed at the things I said. They used to bring me shots of Hennessy. Hey, listen.
In lieu of rates and
reviews, hit me on the DM. I'm going to send you a P.O. box. I don't know the rules in this Commonwealth. Send me a shottle of Hennessy to the P.O. box, please.
What is it? Contactless delivery? You know what I mean?
Yeah, put a little sanitation wipe in there.
So I'll spray it down with the squirt before I take it to the, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But nah, we appreciate, your patience with us. We're happy to be back, and we're very excited about our guest, our first guest in our new format where we're sitting on the couch. I want to see how we get along. But this guest, a wonderful story. I actually had the pleasure of meeting this young lady at Scott McTaggart's, one of his, I don't know if it was a penthouse networking event. I don't know what, he got one of them things where he just connect everybody in places that you can never go without his cosign. But we have Courtney Williamson, CEO of A Bill of Life, in the building. Say what up to the people.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
This is very, That was a nice. That was business.
Yeah, that's. I meet people. I used to shake hands.
Yeah, that was a very Zoom call. Like, you know,
she got the background is Zoom appropriate.
Yes,
you know, you don't know where I am. Am I in my living room? Am I in my basement?
There's no crazy background. You know what I mean?
No kids running around making a bunch of noise. We gonna get business done. My voice, it's check writing. Is it? Like you can write a check to that voice.
Truth, man. And it's wild how our culture has now like gotten more adept to that. That wasn't a thing. A year ago.
Nah.
Your Zoom etiquette, but you have it down. You have it down pat. So thank you.
Zoom etiquette was terrible back in June. You had to learn some shit.
After the update,
yeah. When we first was hitting the Zooms, wasn't nothing getting done. But we're very grateful that I know you had a busy day today, so we're thankful for you taking the time. For the listeners who are not aware, let them know about yourself, your background, and a bill of life, and how you got into that.
I started a bill of life about 6 years ago, and it was a really crazy experience because I had pivoted out of a planned academic career. So I was, prior to starting a bill of life, I was a PhD student at Carnegie Mellon, and based in Pittsburgh, and I was studying organizational behavior. So my biggest thing was I really wanted to be a business school professor and teach students about teams and organizations, negotiations, et cetera. And that was sort of my path. But the one thing that was always playing in the background was my mom, and she had Parkinson's disease for about 25 years. So pretty much my whole life, I was a caretaker along with my family. And one of the things that she struggled with was posture and balance. And I was looking and trying to find solutions to help her, and I couldn't find anything. So I thought maybe I'd just sort of make something for her and link up with some engineers at Carnegie Mellon. And long story short, I ended up stumbling across Project Olympus, which is Carnegie Mellon's startup incubator. And as a prerequisite for them even talking to me about linking me up with engineers, I had to write a one-page sort of business summary about what I wanted. And I thought it was kind of weird because I said, I don't want to start a business. I just want to make something for my mom. And I ended up finding out that there's about 1.5 million Parkinson's patients in America, and 70 to 90% of them had the same problem that my mom had. And I think it was at that moment that my gears started shifting. At the moment I was finishing up my dissertation at CMU, and I was really weighing, like, maybe I can do both, or how does that work? And I think my passion just started leading me towards being in med tech. So we're here 6 years later, created my product, which is a back brace called the CalBrace Plus. It's on the market, reimbursed by insurance. It's patented, and it works by lifting your shoulders up and back and giving you support across your torso, which is really unique and nothing like that's on the market. People often ask me, did my mom ever try the product? And so actually 6 months after I founded the company, she passed away. Oh. She had been dealing with the disease for a really long time, longer than most people. So now I get to spend my time in my day working on products to help people like her. But yeah, just about me personally, I love solving problems for people. I love finding that like really difficult challenge that is negatively impacting people's quality of life or just their feeling of safety or well-being, and trying to find solutions. So I think that's the thing that drew me away from academia, which is an amazing profession, but often it takes a long time before you can see the result of your labor, to entrepreneurship, where I can put out a product and I can get an email saying, hey, my husband's a really stubborn man. He didn't want to try the brace, but now he won't take it off because it's really helped his posture and he feels more secure when he walks. So that's a little bit about me.
We brought a tartan. We brought a tartan to the cast. We should have saved you for the third episode back. I ain't got shit to add.
I ain't even in shape for this right now. Like she said, she started off with the PhD.
She said dissertation.
CMU.
I've never delivered one of those. Never had a dissertation. I've never dissertated. Is that a word? I'm discerned. I think I'm discerned.
I feel like I may have in the course of my long relationship storied relationship, maybe have had a dissertation or two.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
But I've never been paid in academia in any way. It was,
but there's so much to pull from that, because I think what's wonderful about that story is aligning a passion and being able to dedicate your time to that, right? Like I think problem solving, I think with the organizational behavior, I'd imagine that's booming right now just because of what's going on with COVID. So you probably looking at that like, damn, if I'd have delivered that dissert.
Listen, so the cool thing about it was I did end up finishing and graduating, which was a great experience in being able to defend my dissertation. And I actually studied community college student performance and looked at like various individual factors that impact students. So that was just a fascinating topic for me. But when I look at organizational behavior, one of the things that I looked at for my company was the fact that I didn't really want to build and still don't want to build a huge team, because for me, my end goal is really to sell my company at some point to a larger company and do sort of an acquisition. And I know from OB literature, building a team, it takes many, many years to build a really big, robust team. And I know some of the amazing benefits, but also the challenges that come with it. So I knew that I had to choose between, am I going to build this really big team and have a huge office and kind of dedicate all of my energy to that, and then hire somebody else to build the product and to build and to work on customer service, et cetera? Or am I going to work on the asset that I ultimately want a company to buy me for? And I think that's helped me in the time of COVID, because it's just myself and another person who's full-time on my staff. And then I work with a number of contractors all around the world, actually. So because of that, it was very, very easy to move from our offices to our homes. And I think I've been very fortunate in that, but I've always built a company that was very lean on purpose, because as a startup, you have to learn how to pivot. I think what I see from an OB perspective is people are, and understandably so stuck in the way that they've done things. It's very hard to pivot. It's very hard to get your Zoom persona, right? It's really hard how do you work when you have like 3 kids running around your house? Like, so structuring your work life, I don't think we structure our work lives. I think we just kind of passively allow them to happen to us. And then COVID made it so that now you had to actually be strategic about how you work. And I don't think a lot of people think about that.
I think that's super interesting, because I was, I've been saying throughout the year, like, I feel like a life of instability has prepared me for an unstable world, all of, like you said, I mean, being lean, knowing how to survive with less. And, not just going with the flow, but like, because when in comedy, in arts, like, a lot of that, there's no guaranteed check. There's no every 2 weeks, it's what you make of it. And summer times are rough. I mean, for comedy, we got to compete with God and the sun, so like, we got to figure out what we're going to do in the summertime. We got to figure out what we're going to do when something like a pandemic and, the entertainment, there's never been that. And while you envy that, you envy folks who have more stability, especially pre-COVID. You find in this pandemic, a lot of the folks who didn't have that same stability are just like, well, this is how it always is. Like, there's, you just gotta, you gotta figure out a way. And the folks that have more baggage, the folks that have more things, like they're not able to be as nimble, and move around. So, that is pretty interesting that, coming in, to that, with that perspective. What was it like? What was it like going from the, like academia to entrepreneur? Like, because you, like you said, you're in a PhD program at CMU. That's not a low level, like, like, oh, I was my freshman year of college and then, something hit me and then I pivoted, so like, and with that, you're building up a lot of connections and a lot of, a network of people, and like to get there is no easy thing. But then to try this, that's a different world, and it can be scary. And I'm sure there's a lot of folks that would even question why you would do that. And then you yourself have to question, like, because it's not as secure. So what was that transition like into that, and how have you? I don't know. I mean, what have you learned thus far?
Yeah, for me, one of the things about me is that I take my faith wherever I go and in any sort of circumstance. And so for me, this has been such a faith journey, and a lot of it doesn't even have to do with the physical product itself, but just how I'm growing as a woman and what does that look like. So I think that for me, when I thought about, and trust me, there were a lot of people who thought I was crazy for leaving this like very secure position to move into something that I had no idea about at all. And I kind of thought that too for a little bit. But the thing is that in life, you can't rest on what you perceive to be guaranteed. No one owes you anything. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's a hard thing. I mean, it's a hard thing to say to yourself as an adult. I think we kind of chastise teenagers and kids, who maybe are acting bratty and think that they're owed something. But if we look at ourselves as adults, like we think we're owed things too. And we operate under that assumption. So no one owes me a cushiony, easy life.
Not a damn thing.
Right. And so when you look at it from that perspective, then it becomes, why not? Like, why not try this thing that you feel led to and you think that you can learn it? In terms of actually learning it, it was very difficult. There was such a huge and steep learning curve. I liken it to doing another PhD because it took about 4 or 5 years for me to really understand medical devices, manufacturing products, et cetera.
The lingo and the vocabulary is a completely it's a different dictionary.
Like venture capital and what is that? And just, it was a lot. But I knew, I was like, but I didn't know anything about organizational behavior or PhD program when I started. So I didn't think of it as anything different. I have immense faith that I can figure out just about anything. So when you go into it with that perspective, then, just get to work. And I think it's just the continuous, somewhat monotonous, waking up every morning and doing the same thing and building until before you know it, you look up and you actually know what you're talking about and people are coming to you for advice. So that, I think
that's a weird transition.
Yeah, it is. It's a weird transition, but it's a fun one, especially when I get to talk to other Black women entrepreneurs who are trying to build something in the medical device space or just physical space, period.
It's fun when you don't have to manage people. Managing people is
that's the hard part.
Managing adults, because you always look at them like you grown as hell, and you can't say that on Zoom, like you grown as hell. Like, why didn't you do this email? You knew it was due. Why not? Like, you're grown.
I mean, but one of the things that I look at from a leader's perspective is, did they know that they needed to do it, or was I not effective in communicating?
Oh, you mature. You mature.
Yeah.
You're real mature. You knew it was in the email.
Yeah, but you have to look back, and it's difficult. It is difficult managing people because people have their own baggage, and I do think there is such a thing as a work persona. Like I think that's a part that people are missing in COVID is that when you go to work, you can become somebody else that you're not at home.
Right.
And when you're at home and your home is now work, your coworker is your spouse or your roommate or your kids or whatever, and you can't interact with them the same way.
Well, that structure was always made for you. You would go into the workplace.
I also think that people have a drive to want to feel competent and useful. And when you take that away, they start to act really strange. So when you go to work, maybe that's the person's only place where they feel really competent and useful. Right.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Then the energy shifts. But like when you're constantly at home, how do you feel competent when no one's kind of like just, verbally giving you those confidence boosters, as they walk past you in the hallway or whatever. Right. That's different.
Yeah, everyone else is focused on something different. They don't know. They don't know the business that you're doing. They don't understand. You don't have anyone to turn to and ask a quick question that might be that small bridge to getting that one task done. So I do understand that. You're still way more mature than I would be in how you approach it. But that might be the OB PhD.
Yeah, exactly. That's a couple of papers.
Because I'm still like, you grown.
Yeah, that's a couple of papers deep. Yeah, that's a dissertation. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, no. I mean, that is, and that's wild. How like a lot of relationships are good. So one, office politics, the motherfucker that doesn't get any kind of positive affirmation outside of that goddamn job. They are weird. Those are typically the office snitches who are always looking for, extra goodie points from the boss. I'm like, do you get paid to snitch on commission or something, bro? Like, why is so they typically, but then I think it's wild was, relationships in the age of COVID, me and my fiance, we're both artists. So we've been working from home for a while now, and that dynamic has been rough because most relationships you have 40 hours, 50 hours, 60 hours a week where you're between traffic and being away, and then you have, like you said, you have a work persona. We all have different personas. I have, I interact with Ed differently than I interact with my mom, differently than I interact with my, so we all have different, kind of places or whatever. And when you take all of that away and then you pack it into just the home, like you said, people don't have that outlet. And that's going to be interesting to see how relationships, evolve moving forward because, and that affects the workplace because if you're not right at home, if your home place isn't cool, then, and with the world, with the pandemic, everything else on top of it, like that, it starts to have this kind of domino effect.
And just forward. From on a micro level, not having the physical space at home. I mean, that's a huge deal. Like if you have to hold your Zoom meetings in your living room and that's where everyone's watching TV. And so now you got to tell them to be quiet over in the corner while I do this. But they're like, you in our space. Yeah. No, you in my space. Like it's crazy.
And because it's not. So with the pandemic, like people are like, these companies are looking at it and be like, well, why are we paying for all this office space? Like just do it from home. So with this mass shift to at home working is going to come a mass shift in the social, interactions that we do have at home. And that's going to be extremely interesting to watch over the next few years.
Are you paying me enough to carve out a space to where I can separate my life from my work life at home because that's what you're now tasking me to do. Mm-hmm. You used to provide that space, and that was a part of that was part of the compensation, right? Like I would go here, I would need a parking spot. Maybe you would, if there was a lease situation, I'd get a discount, but I came to your space, used your internet, your electricity, your computer. I didn't have to take up space on my laptop. But now if you're going to make me do this stuff at home, are you going to pay me to make a little home office? Are you going to pay me enough to now not go from a 3-bedroom when I got 3 kids to now maybe getting a 4-bedroom that I can convert one to a home office? There's going to be a bunch of dynamic shifts.
Yeah.
And for you, having worked through that, a dynamic shift internally, but you had that passion behind it because it did hit close to home. You had an understanding of sorts, just dealing with your mother, but not understanding how to build a business, so to speak, and the tech side of it, learning that. What do you think was the most difficult part? Learning how to build the business or understanding the actual science or tech of it while trying to build a business?
I think there are two main people that have influenced me in my life, and those are my parents. My dad actually has been an entrepreneur since before I was born. So he has his company that he has now has been around for about 40 years. And actually, he's still here and alive. And one of my fondest childhood memories is listening, kind of eavesdropping in on my dad's work conversations while we were driving in the car and he was on the phone. So I've always been around entrepreneurship. That's what I know. I didn't know that I was going to associate it with myself, but it's not foreign to me. I think for me, the hardest part of building my company was being patient and understanding that things take time. There wasn't one particular piece of the company that was like, oh, this is so insurmountable. It's going to take time. Mm-hmm. I had to work with Medicare, insurance companies, like they take a longer time to do things. So as an entrepreneur, you want things done within a week. And, an organization, they won't even send you an email like, hey, we got your paperwork. It'll take them a week to let you know, like, thanks for sending this to us. You might have sent it to the black void, but we have, but here you go. We do have it. Right. And so I think that's important. I think one of the things, though, that you were mentioning earlier, just about COVID and about how people are interacting, I'm really hoping that people stop rushing towards let's get back to normal, because I don't quite frankly think that it was healthy or normal what we were doing.
And you got research. You got research behind it, so we're gonna listen to you on this.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, and this isn't anything particularly that I can cite from any paper, but for me, I just know how unsustainable my life was. And I was an entrepreneur and I could make my own schedule, right? But just thinking about just the idea of what is work-life balance, I don't really think it exists in the way that, okay, this is my work and this is my life and they can't touch. Like, I think that there's a lot of interweaving, and I think we're having a difficulty with that. So thinking about how to reconstruct your life, we've been giving a really great opportunity with COVID to say, like, everything has to kind of upend. So when you're starting to build it back up, don't just default to building what was there. Like, if you go to a hurricane ground zero, are they going to build the houses exactly how they built them? The ones that were completely decimated? No. They're going to try to find better engineering solutions so that when a hurricane comes again, it's not going to completely flatline the house. So that's the biggest piece that I think. And as an entrepreneur, you're constantly building. So for me, a big piece of my business is automation. I've been obsessed with automating things, so that when patients come in, like, they're getting automated messages, like, things are moving along so that we're constantly having a touch point without myself or my office manager going in and actually manually doing that. So for me, that's been a big project of mine. But I think I will always be building this business until it's sold, because I think there's always better ways to build it, to make it stronger, to make it better. So I think that if you play your cards right, this season can be a very productive time in understanding how am I living and how do I want to live? Give yourself permission to ask yourself that, like, how do I want to live? What does that look like? How can I incorporate more of what I want into what I'm doing?
Yeah, I mean, this pandemic is forcing people to, like I said, I mean, if you're saying more time at home, you're now coming more to grips. A lot of people will go to work to kind of get away from home, to get away from a certain life or whatever. And it's like, now you don't have that escape and you have so many more hours on it. It's like, okay, so those, even if you just take away the commute, that's, for a lot of people, that's an extra, 20 hours a week.
That's the best time of the day.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of, folks that have, more time. So what are you going to do with that extra time? You know what I mean? Like, and then you start to discover, like, was my whole personality just work and the Kardashians afterwards? Like, and like you said, not going back to normal, having to adjust. You're going to have to learn how to do that. And I like how you were saying, you saw, entrepreneurial, like your endeavor going from academia into your own business as kind of like, a new learning curve and treating it like university. And they say, like 10,000 hours to master, something like that. And like, I remember when we first got into comedy, it was like always like, they always say, 10 years to be an overnight success. And it all kind of goes into that same, like, if you spend this many hours learning a craft of some sort, then eventually you will get to a place of mastery or whatever. So, you coming from traditional, academic background, going into that, where did you find your knowledge? I mean, were you taking courses, or were you looking, more online for resources? Like, where were you gaining the knowledge to be successful? And, how does that weigh against traditional academia where, now you don't necessarily need to go into a traditional classroom to learn something, moving forward. So like, I guess speak a bit more on that.
Yeah, I mean, I find inspiration from everywhere. I try to always be a student and a learner, because I think that the more you learn and the more you're open and receptive to learning about all facets of a company or whatever you're working on, then the more of an expert you are, and it becomes easier for you to piece together parts. So I've learned a lot about intellectual property law. I've learned about manufacturing. I've learned about Medicare and insurance. I've also learned about fundraising. I've learned about user experience. I spent a lot of time with Parkinson's patients, sitting in their support groups, and they've been phenomenal. just teaching me and talking to me about their condition, because up until that point, I really only had an N of one, my mom. I really only knew her story, but that wasn't going to cut it if I was going to make a whole product line in a company. So yeah, I mean, I think the biggest part is that I don't think there's any one place that you can learn things from. I also think it's important to get mentorship and guidance, but be willing to know that. So Pareto's law is 80% of, some sort of yield, or 80% of, you can think of maybe like a crop, is produced by just 20% of the seeds. Right. So that can be frustrating when you have to do the whole 100%, because you don't know which 20% is going to be the one, right? It'd be too easy to just let me just do the 20% that's right. Right.
Well, then you would have 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's the tricky part. And you can't get around that. I hear a lot of entrepreneurs who try to do like growth hacking, or they'll try to find shortcuts, and it doesn't work. Like, you really do have to plant all 100 seeds and water all 100 seeds, knowing that there's only 20 that are going to produce. But when they produce, though, that'll be the majority of what you have. And so unfortunately, that just takes a lot of time and patience. And those are two things that I think I've had to work on the most, was my mindset about how quickly I thought I should be going.
So I one of my takeaways just from listening to you is, one thing I try to identify with our guests, who saw entrepreneurs growing up, right? Because I think that's a crossroads that I'm entering at this point. It's been magnified by COVID, right? So I have a professional career that I've been moderately successful within, but there is a structure to it. So I'm used to getting up, putting my suit on, my kids seeing me put on my suit, go out, and coming from Cleveland, coming from a Rust Belt, coming from like a blue collar situation where that's what you saw growing up. You saw your parents go to work at the establishment, right? But then I have my partner, their mother, they see her work from home. And I'm watching my kids respond to that, but not so much even just their response to it, but like, you know what? For them, I would love for them to be in that field. And like even with comedy, they're most responsive to the accolades that I gained through this, right? The things that I built from my own volition. You know what I mean? Like, so I always think it's great for individuals to see entrepreneurs grow up, see people build their businesses from the ground up, and for their offspring to see that so they can aspire to that. I also feel, though, it's more important now because with this uncertain future and watching, and you're involved with this entrepreneurial ecosystem. I hear this all the time now in Pittsburgh, this ecosystem of entrepreneurs kind of holding each other's hands and driving everything, especially here in Pittsburgh. And Black women in general have been at the forefront of that. With CMU, you found that incubator program. What sort of programs or something or things of that nature have you seen within the city? It seems to be a focus that can help an entrepreneur. I know accelerator and incubator programs. What sort of, I guess, resources would you point someone to who may have an idea or a passion and they'd like to get started, but they don't know how to do it, right? They don't know how to get out of their own way, for example.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think accelerators are great tools, particularly if you don't have a baseline for entrepreneurship. Let me just start by saying that I think, before giving resources, I think that sometimes we overcomplicate what entrepreneurship is. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes that's really slick marketing, and because people need to sell products, right? They need to sell accelerators, they need to sell their courses, their programs, et cetera. But really, entrepreneurship is making something of value and receiving compensation for that. Very simple, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Now, there are tons of nuances, and there are tons of people who have done this before, of course. And they have, there's ways to conduct business. There's ways to be more efficient than others, et cetera. But I think that when we place so much emphasis on like, oh, it's this like mystical thing that like you only can developed through osmosis of watching your parents do it. I think that what that does is it shifts your mindset. It becomes like a fixed mindset. Like, I didn't grow up in a home with entrepreneurs, therefore I cannot be one. And that's not true. Now, we don't say that to young athletes, like, oh, well, did your mom play soccer? Oh, she didn't? Probably not. Hit the ball, right? What did we do? We stick them in the soccer class, in soccer team, and we make them, run, and we watch, and then have them watch, soccer games and et cetera. So like, we understand that concept. Like, we understand that if you work hard at it, and if you were intentional about bringing yourself to the soccer field, you'll learn. Who has a soccer field in the back of their house, right? So you go to the soccer field. So if you did not have entrepreneurs in your home, then go to places where they are there. So I think that's one thing. In terms of in the city of Pittsburgh, I benefited greatly from Alpha Lab Gear, which is a nationally ranked hardware accelerator, because my device is a hardware medical device. And they just actually launched an accelerator specifically for health. Which I think is going to be phenomenal. I think they're still accepting applications for their first cohort. But that's great. And I think the point of an accelerator, people get hung up on the money that you receive and then the equity you have to give away. And there are considerations to that, but it gives you kind of like a hand-holding process where you have this cohort of people who are doing the same type of thing. You can talk to them, bounce ideas off of before you're kind of launched into the real world. There are any number of virtual accelerators that you can look up and become a part of. And I think that's great. The one thing that I will caution against is don't over accelerate yourself. Like, don't you have to get into all these programs, or like, oh, if I don't get into this really top program, then that means, some of that, not all, but some of that is just propaganda, right? Again, please keep it simple. Make something of value and get money for it. That's it. That's what entrepreneurship is. And the other thing is that over these years, I've been asked by so many people, how did you start your company? I want to create this hardware product. I don't know where to begin. So one of my sort of passion projects is I actually launched a podcast like last week, which is super cool, and developed a course to teach people how to manufacture their physical products in about 90 days or so.
Drop the name now.
I was like, you had us on the edge of our seat. Like, where's the promotion?
Yeah, so the podcast is called The Heart of Startups, and you can find it on iTunes. I think it's on SoundCloud, definitely on Spotify. And it's about 25-minute long episodes and just talking about various topics, because I think that just simplifying it's not as complex as everybody makes it to be. When you start saying it's so complex, what happens is you don't do it at all. You start something and then you stop it because you don't know where to go. And I get that. But part of my training as a PhD student was understanding how to work myself through modules. So understanding how to work myself through, what am I going to do with this whole year? I have to start writing my dissertation. You don't just end up with a final dissertation. So how do you break that down into small pieces? So that's one of my abilities and gifts, is to break a really big concept down into small bite-sized pieces that you can kind of chew on. So that I'm super excited about that, but yeah, don't feel like you have to join every program. That can sometimes be daunting. Start with the basic, ask questions, rinse and repeat. Just keep on doing that, one foot in front of the other, and then you'll eventually end up with something that has some substance to it.
Nice. So what are you doing? What's your, I don't know, with so much going on, and having, a company, and all the crazy turns and whatnot, like what are you doing to kind of stay even keeled throughout all of this? What are some I don't know, some new, coping mechanisms that you've developed over the last, I don't know, 8 months or so.
How do you chill?
Yeah, because it is like, so I go to the car wash a lot. Like I go to the car wash a lot. Like it's one of, and it is one of those. I got the lights that are flashing and the bubbles are going, and it pushes me through, and it's nice. I've turned the music up, and it's like club, it's like a little club thing. You know what I mean? And I go to Bob Evans across the street afterwards. I get a little takeout, and I go home, and that's my thing. You see what I'm saying? Like
play the let out at Bob Evans.
The let out at Bob Evans. You know what I'm saying?
Man,
like
that's how far we've fallen. Bob Evans down on the farm.
It's been a long time since Lesbo's down at the South Side. You know what I mean?
Ooh.
So, what are some things that you've developed over the last few months that's helping you kind of get through?
At the end of June, I started this program, and I exercise for an hour every day, and I haven't missed since June, and that's been amazing. I just go for a walk and listen to a podcast or music, and it's been phenomenal. So just moving my body is very important to me. And then I'm one of probably 1% of people in the world, but I love this quarantine time. Like I love it. I don't want it to go back. Because being around a lot of people is exhausting to me. It's very draining to me. So my energy comes from being by myself. I really need that space. So just the fact that I have to be, I'm sorry, there's COVID outside. I can't go. It's amazing to me. I love it. So I'm gonna miss, and I love wearing masks as well.
That's one of my favorite pastimes.
COVID, I have a whole collection.
Oh, you got to line up your closet. You got them all draped, and you start accessorizing patterns and colors.
They're in a drawer. But yeah, I have all my accessories. So I'm very strange. I like this time to just kind of be by myself. But I understand that doesn't work for me. But that's the biggest thing for me. Actually, is allowing myself to be by myself. And I should have done this. I shouldn't have taken a pandemic for me to carve out that time to be like, I'm not going into the office for 3 days because I need to sit in my home and do my work. So
a lot of people finding out they don't like themselves. That's what's wilding out, man. Imagine spending.
They don't like themselves or the people that they're with. I feel off. I really, in the beginning of this pandemic, I prayed for marriages and relationships in particular, because I realized how our relationships are set up so that we don't have to be around each other. And it made me sad thinking about how many we're going to realize the fault lines that were already there and have been there for years. And I think that's happening. So I definitely pray for our families, our kids. But think about this. How many school shootings have we had this year?
That's okay. That's glass half full.
Not that have been reported, because they're not in school.
Folks gonna start shooting at home.
Maybe.
Start shooting.
Yeah,
letting them off. Lay down.
But the casualties are going to be much. It's not going to be a whole schoolhouse, right?
I understood.
Think about the mental health of making sure that people, right? Also, my friend was saying, how many sexual harassment cases have gone down at work?
It's hard to sexually harass via Zoom. I guess.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to get to the thing that maybe we shouldn't be together as people. I don't want to go down that that path or whatever.
There's some people that shouldn't be around people.
There are some people that shouldn't. You know what I mean? But I do think that there are some benefits. Even global warming has kind of been kind of curb checked a little bit, because we're not out as much or whatever. Though it is starting to come back in ways like overproduction of cans and things of that nature that we need to survive indoors or whatever. But then I think there's also a thing that's to be said about how in war-torn countries, suicide is so low because you have a reason to fight to live. So when you have 260,000 deaths, especially 60,000, that was the latest number that were caused because of the mismanagement of it. Then things like school shootings and angst about the world not caring about you or whatever. Those types of things. One, there's not as many people there, but then you start to see where you're not as focus on yourself during a time like this when the rest of the world, like everything is burning. I mean, and like, when they say mental health issues are the reason why school shootings happens and things like that, it's terrorism. And yes, mental health issue does play a part in some way. But, again, you start to look at, I believe, where when you have I think society has a role in various mental health issues. And when you are in a time like COVID, while it may create certain things, something like, oh, well, woe is me is a bit more diminished in that, especially if you don't have if you're healthy and middle class and white in the age of Trump right now, like,
you're doing okay.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be
doing better than most.
Yeah.
So you're doing better than most. Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we go, I do need to, if I may, I want to tap into your OB expertise, and if you could, for the folks listening, can you talk about how we could cut down on the length of time on these Zoom calls, and why people and organizations talk so damn much? Because the one thing that I think that happened in COVID is this: we've realized that sometimes our leaders don't be saying shit. Like, you really be sitting on these Zoom calls like, okay, this could have been a 15-minute call, or it really could have just been a nice email with some bullet points. Like, it's crazy how how do you manage that within an organization, right? So you said your organization is slim, and obviously, you and one other full-time, but you're dealing with so many external entities dealing with insurance and stuff like that. Like, how do you make these Zoom calls more efficient from an organizational standpoint?
Okay, so I'm going to quickly give you from 3 perspectives quickly. So I'll do the one that I know best, entrepreneurship. If you are a leader and you're an entrepreneur, the more you're talking, the less your employee is working. You're paying them to listen to you talk. So is what you're saying going to make you money? If the answer is no, hang up the phone. That's that. Now, if you are a leader or manager in a large corporate organization, and it's not a startup, but it's corporate organization. If your employees are not going to work, they're going to find a way to go around it anyway. And keeping them on a long Zoom call just to assert control is silly. So cut it out. The best thing you can do is benchmark them and look at what it is that they're producing and whether or not it meets your standards, so that when it's time for their next review, if you need to hire or, demote or fire or whatever, you can do so based off of benchmarks, not the amount of time you spend holding them on Zoom calls. I think that it's a little bit passive aggressive. I've heard someone who was on a 5-hour Zoom call, and I just think that passive aggressive, because it was that the person did not want to let them go. He wanted to see that they were working, and that doesn't work. Either they're going to do their work or they're not.
Or they're going to start jacking off like that Jeffrey Toobin guy.
Right. And then the last part is, if you are an employee in a corporation, then I think it is perfectly fair to ask your boss, hey, I want to be as prepared as possible for this Zoom call. Is there an agenda? Because I want to make sure that I'm hitting all the points and I'm prepared. Also, I just want to make you aware that I have a meeting scheduled with myself right after to get starting working on what we need to do. So please let me know if you think we're going to go over.
I'm using that. I got a meeting scheduled with myself after this call.
Ruth.
Correct.
Yeah. You just freed up my whole afternoon every Monday.
There we go.
I got a meeting scheduled with myself
Always
from 11 to 5:30.
That you're supposed to be building value no matter who you are. So if you can't build value, if you're talking and that means you're not building value. This isn't an offsite.
Nice.
So that's what I have.
So what is your favorite form of potato?
God damn it. That's supposed to be left pre-quarantine. We're supposed to lead that.
No, not at all.
Food?
Yeah. What is your favorite form of potato?
I love all potatoes.
I know. Everybody loves potatoes. What's your favorite form of potato? Everybody loves potatoes.
No, Belgian. I really have like a love for potatoes. If I could eat just potatoes, I would.
Most people will. It's the one vegan thing that I love and will die eating. It was the first maybe vegan food that I knew that I loved, and man, it's just it's one of the most heavily consumed the most heavily consumed food items on the planet. Like, of course, who doesn't love? Every culture has a gourd that they love. You see what I'm saying? So what's your favorite form of potato?
I think for me, it's going to be like Belgian fries, like real Belgian fries.
What's a Belgian fry?
So it's the way that they fry it. One of my like stress releases, I will watch tasty videos on Facebook where like they're cooking. So Belgian fries are like they cut a certain way and they're like fried. I think they're like double fried, and they're made about. And then they normally serve it with mayo. Huh. So I just like to have like a little like lightly salted, fresh out of the fryer, like just really crispy on the outside, but like nice and warm and like fluffy on the inside.
The fried mayo combination.
Yeah, you know what they call it. You know what they call a Big Mac in France. They call it a Royale with cheese. I don't know, man. You said fries and mayo, man. Like that's some European.
It's very good though.
I think I had that at Park Bruges. They do that. They do the frites. They do the frites with the mayo.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're just really lovely. Very simple. Yeah.
Oh, I wish we had more time with you. You're just so fucking cultured and intelligent. Damn, you dissertated on us. I found a way to get out of work. I'm gonna tell my boss, like, listen, I got a meeting scheduled with myself. Like, if there's a take, we should title the episode "Meeting Scheduled with Myself."
Truth. Yeah,
so before we go, please tell the people where they can find you, where they can find your new podcast, and where they, if there's a listener who feels like they can benefit from A Bill of Life, how they can get in contact, with your company.
So A Bill of Life, it's just www.abilloflife.com, and you can check us out, check to see if you are eligible for insurance coverage for the back brace. And then for my new project, you can look at www.theheartofstartups.com. And you can also type in The Heart of Startups for podcast, iTunes podcasts, and Spotify. And I'm there. So hopefully, whatever I'm sharing, people will be able to learn from, because I'm kind of tired of people just wandering around, not sure where to go, and then getting kind of scammed by people who are not well-meaning. So I'd love to be able to share as much as I can so people, have a little bit of direction as they're building.
All right, Dave, let the people know where they can find us.
Hey, if you're looking for us, you can find us, comfortable at home, safe, or outside somewhere. Mask the fuck up, because it's 2020, man. This pandemic is real. Fuck Donald Trump, and we are the Drinky Partners. You can find us on epicastnetwork.com/partnerspod. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, Google Play, and Spotify under Drinky Partners. And you can find us on IG, Twitter, and Facebook at PartnersPod.
Listen, we want to thank our guest, Courtney Williamson, again for taking her time, enlightening us, getting us back into the swing of things. You had us on our A game. We had to be on our shit, but really love your story. Really love what you're doing. Look out for it. It's The Hardest Startup.
The Heart.
The Heart is Startup.
Of. O-F.
The Heart of Startup. All right. The Heart of Startup. Look out for it. Very knowledgeable young woman. Very accomplished. We appreciate you spending your time with us. And as always, Drinking Partners is the crew. Epicast is the family.
We
thank you very much. Oh my God, that was great.
Yeah, this has been dope. This is our first.
We're first back. It was like a couple months. Studio. Like since August.
Yeah.
This was really good. I wish because we could have gone all into how you deal with insurance companies and all that, and joked on that. Got some good information. We can always do a part 2.
Yeah, we can all. We've had guests come on multiple times, and I'm sure as you grow, we'll just. Because like you said, this is a conversation that can go on for hours. To be honest, I'm very impressed, and I'm always learning on this podcast.
Epicast.